Hey, everybody, give me just a second. Let me finish setting this up. I want to make sure I get the link in here, and then we're going to go live. Okay, here we go. Nope, I'm not seeing it live yet, so give me just a second. You guys can probably see me. Okay. There we go. Okay, I can see you guys now. So let me open this up so I can see chat and comment. Okay. Hi, everybody. So thank you for joining me live tonight on Reuniting after 44 years of alienation. Let me just mute that. Okay. So I am Dawn McCarty, and I am an adult survivor of severe parental alienation. And I am your host tonight on this live presentation for the Reversing Parental Alienation class that will be following this event at 7:30 Eastern Time, right after this. So if you want to join me live in that class, you can do that by signing up with Ginger's group coaching. And there's a one-time fee that you can get 3 months of group coaching led by Ginger and other United Alienated Kid coaches like myself. Plus, you'll also get the roadmap course for a one-time payment of $499. And I'm going to post this link in the chat for everybody and the information too, so you know what you're getting. And there's that. I'll pin it in here too once I get it posted. I think I can pin it. Let's see. And live chat. There it goes. All right, let me see if I can pin that. That way it is. Nope, I can't pin it. So I might just have to post it a couple of times. So anyway, I want to get started right away. So we only have 20 minutes here for the live event. So once you get signed up, I want you to make sure you send a copy of your receipt over to the Erasing Family Facebook group, send a message in Messenger so that I can see that you signed up, and I'll make sure you get the link to join us for the class right after this live. So let's begin. I'm going to share with you tonight some of the tips that I have shared with the parents from class last week. But first, I want to kind of give you an analogy of something that I think is important for parents and kids and how you're interacting with them and communicating with them. And so I want to talk about the analogy of magnetism. And I want you to learn and become a magnet for your child. So if you know anything about magnets, and I have them here and they're kind of small, I'm going to try and see if I can show this to you. So here's two magnets here. And when you try to force things on the wrong polar, because there's two poles, there's a north pole and a south pole to any magnetic field, right? So when you have the wrong sides, the wrong alignment, the wrong configuration, you are not going to be able to make that connection. In fact, the more you push, you're pushing them away. So I want you to think about this analogy when you're engaging with your kids. And I want you to make sure that you have the right connection. So I'm going to flip this one over. I'm going to show you how easy it is to attract that child to you. So this is the analogy I want you to think of every time you post anything on social media, anytime you're making a phone call. I want you to be the attraction, not the other side, and being the repellent. So we don't want to repel your kids away. We want to attract them. So you're going to be that magnet. So as we go through the rest of these tips, I want you to think of ways that you can apply this in your particular situation, because every situation is different. But can this help you in working with that kind of magnetism between you and your child? So that's the analogy that I wanted to start with. But the first tip that I talked about last week in class was, well, one of the tips, they're not really in any kind of specific order, but trust. Trust is such a cornerstone for a healthy relationship between you and your kids. And to be honest, it's really difficult when you've gone through a high conflict divorce or separation because the trust kind of fell out of the bottom for your kids. They don't know what happened. They may not have any trust left at all at this particular point, depending on the circumstances. So the job for you is to really concentrate on rebuilding and reestablishing that trust, because kids need to feel safe. They don't know that they need to feel safe, but they seek safety. They seek security. So they need you to be that safety and that security for them. They need to know that is a safe place for them to be. So trust is probably the foundational element to reconnecting and rebuilding a relationship with your kids. So when your trust is severely damaged, it's going to take different efforts and different strategies to try and figure out how to still maintain a relationship when everybody's world's turned upside down and nothing's the same. So it makes it a little bit more challenging, and I get that. But I still want you to keep it in mind that everything you do, you want to be that magnet and you want to establish that trust. So trust being the reliable, you're keeping promises, you're being honest yet sensitive, you're showing unconditional love. And unconditional love means there is no expectations. There's no expectations for that to be reciprocated. There's no expectations for them to want to do anything or say anything. They don't want to be, coerced by anybody. And if that's already happening in their situation, then we're going to have to figure out ways to not add to that same type of feeling. So that's one thing I also want you to consider is when one of your children lash out or are trying to resist you, you have to remember that that's not necessarily their true feelings. They need to know that they can be safe with you, or they need to protect themselves and be safe in the situation they're in. And sometimes that means that they need to step aside. They need to take a break. They need to have some space to figure things out. And they need to settle in to the new world that they all of a sudden find themselves in. They don't know how to navigate it. And we don't know how to navigate it as adults oftentimes. So we can't really expect kids to understand. And we don't know what they really think because they're not really prepared to explain what their feelings truly are. So trust is the most important element that you can afford for your kids at this particular point. The next thing is to always be positive in your messaging. So don't induce guilty feelings. And it's such a backwards way of thinking, but saying certain things that might be normal would not necessarily make your kids feel loved or feel safe or feel secure. For example, if you were to tell your child, I really miss you, that in a way makes them feel guilty because they know you're hurt and then they hurt and they can't do anything about it. So that actually makes things a little harder for you to connect with your child because they don't want to feel guilty about anything. So when those high conflict separations and those divorces are occurring, some of these types of comments lead to feelings of guilt, which basically work against you. So that was one of the other tips that I provided the parents in class last week. So I want you to focus on love and support and avoid any negative talk about the other parent. I want you to be encouraging and open, have that open communication without pressure. And I know that it's really difficult to have those kinds of even thinking about that when you're trying desperately to reach out and make a connection with your child. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for some. For some of you, it might come more naturally. So take what I say, what applies, what works for you, and see what you can do, see what changes that you can make. Another one that was really important from last week is not to reverse alienate. And I gave the analogy or actually the example of my reunification with my father. Now, I hadn't seen him in 44 years, and I didn't know what I was walking in on when I got off that plane. I didn't know who I was really going to meet because I hadn't seen him in 44 years. But one of the things that he did is he was always positive when he talked about my relationship or his relationship with my mother. He never once bashed her, ever, in front of me. And he always prefaced his comments or answers to my sometimes grilling questions, because I wanted answers myself. And I would basically just put the questions out there. They were tough, tough questions. And he would always preempt them with, first, I want you to know, or first, I want you to remember that I loved your mother and we were just kids. And sometimes, as young kids who start off with families, don't always make great decisions or even great partners. So he always made me feel like he was coming from a place of love before he talked to me about the situations that he was about to answer and give me the truth, because I told him I wanted the cold hard truth. So he preempted that, made me feel comfortable that he was not going to bash my mother, because as a child, we are equal parts of our parents. And when one bashes the other, we take that internally, we internalize that, and it becomes about us. So it's really difficult for us to hear that bashing from either. It doesn't matter which parent's doing it. It's really hard for a child to hear something derogatory about their other parent, because it does is part of their identity. That's the other half of that person. So it's really important not to reverse alienate in any way. And talk about the importance of maintaining the high road. So I want you to think about, before you talk, I want you to stop and I want you to think about that magnet. I want you to understand that there's a high road and that that's beneficial for you and your child. And it might be hard, but remember, it's for them. It's always for your kids. And I know you all want to do what's best for your kids and you're trying your hardest to maintain that relationship. So bad mouthing the other parent is definitely not a way. And when you're on social media, your kids are probably watching you. So it's really important that everything you have on social media is positive. And going back to that positive messaging, when you want to include your children and you're doing things or you're not doing things because you feel bad that they're being left out, there's a positive way to actually bring them into that conversation kind of on their own terms, where let's say you had a family outing with your new spouse or friends or your parents or whomever you happen to have an outing with, and it was a great time and you're sharing that on social media, say Facebook, and you want to say something about, oh, man, I wish my kids were there, but by saying that, you're implying a little bit of that guilt there, that they may feel guilty that they weren't there. So instead of saying that, you could say something along the lines of, wow, we had such a fantastic day. We all had so much fun. The only thing that would have made it better is if the whole family was able to join us. And that way, you're not putting any pressure on them, but you're letting them know, hey, I recognize that you weren't here, but I wish you were. So it's less pressure on them, makes it easier for them to understand. So positive messaging on Facebook is kind of difficult in the, by nature of how the social media works. But if they're going to be snooping and looking at your profiles, keep that in mind, that every post you make needs to be a little bit of a magnetism element going on there. You want to attract them. You want them to be curious. You want them to see you as being happy, because the happier you are, the more joy you express in your life, and that your world is a positive and safe space, the more they will want to be a part of it. So that is really one of the most important things too, is making it so they feel like they're missing out. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't want you to, reverse guilt them like that. But you want to show them that, hey, I'm a good person and I'm out here having fun and I'm living life. And that is what kids want to see. They want to see that you're happy, that you're showing joy in your life, and that you're safe to be around. So keep that in mind. And then this is one of my biggest tips. And we only have like 6 minutes left. So I'm going to try and make sure I can get this in. And let me check questions real quick. Okay, I don't see any questions on Facebook. Let me scroll up here. Hey, Dizzy, glad you made it. Hey, Rob, Brenda, glad to see you. Okay, I don't see questions, but thank you so much for these comments. And Dizzy, thank you so much for being part of Erasing Family, I certainly appreciate that. One of the most important things that I would like to ensure that all parents realize before they reunite with their kids is it might be exciting that you got a date, or you've got a meeting, or you're going to have lunch with them, or you've got a date and a time set that you get to meet with your child. The problem is that it's not the first date that I want you to get. I want you to get that second date. I want you to get the invitation to a wedding. I want you to get the invitation to a birthday party for your grandchildren. I want you to be on that guest list. I want you to be considered as part of the invitation pool, or of the family. So that first meeting you can prepare for, and you can say, there's so much for me to share, and you share, you might overshare, or you might undershare. So you got to plan for, how is this going to pace out where I can continue to see my child, and not have that first one be the one and done because you weren't prepared. So how do you prepare? You need to prepare yourself emotionally. You need to prepare yourself psychologically, because you're meeting someone that you know, but you really don't know. And they're not the same little child that you were seeing before, the one that you remember. They now are possibly an adult. Maybe they're an older teenager. Maybe they're even still children, but they've changed a little bit. So the older they are, the more they've changed. The older they are, the less you know. So you need to go in with being that active listener and let it be about them. Let them tell you about their life, and don't make it about anything in the past. So in order for you to get that second date, you got to get past that first date. And we don't want the first date to be foiled and make them try and resist any future connections. So it's kind of metaphoric, but again, I want you to think of that magnet. I want you to want them to be in your world, that you're so energizing, and that is an attractive element for those kids to want to reconnect with you and continue to have a relationship, or to explore a relationship. Like for my dad and myself, we really had to explore. We didn't know anything about each other. But the more we talked, the more we realized how much in common that we had with each other. And that itself is like glue. So the more you are prepared for that, and the more emotionally prepared you are, the more you're going to be able to have that second date and be able to apply those layers of glue that help stick with that bond, recreate that bond. And that's what you're doing. You're recreating a bond. It was there, it's changed. So why I say recreate is because you're starting over. You have to start over with where you are right now, where they are right now, without going backwards. So it's really right down to the minute. We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to cruise right through the comments really fast to see if there's any questions. Dizzy, that's a great example. And your family has been a very good example on that open and unconditional love all the way around. So thank you for sharing your life with everybody. That was definitely good for people to see the dynamics. And it's not just about father-daughter. We're talking about mother and stepmother, and siblings too. So great example there. If you guys haven't seen the Erasing Family film, you definitely need to see that. It definitely will open your eyes, and it's a great film for your kids to see. So if this is the first time you're hearing about it, I definitely encourage you to go and watch the Erasing Family documentary. It's free on Tubi, and I think it's a couple other places as well. So look for that. And also don't forget, if you want to join me in the class here, and we're going to be signing off here in a minute, but we'll be starting the class at 7:30. So at the bottom of the hour, if you have questions, you can join us there. And if you have questions, you're not able to join us tonight, you're not able to join the Reversing Family or Reversing Parental Alienation course with Ginger, then you can still ask questions in our chat on Erasing Family. So feel free to do that as well. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you so much for joining us. Dizzy, it's great to see you. And thank you everybody else that joined us tonight as well. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Let's see if I can get out of here now. Maybe I won't be going off. Oh, it looks like I'm saying, okay, and now I'm going for sure this time. Bye, everybody.